Again, thank you very much for tuning in. We have a whole bunch of you here from what I can see. We normally show you a slide in the very beginning that explains how to run your controls. I'm not going to tell you about the kind of day I had, but I think I feel a whole lot like General Motors when they found out their cars were catching on fire. But we're here. It's a little after 9 o'clock. We're going to get started right away, and off we go. So hopefully you can figure out how to run your controls, because I don't have the ability to show you. But let's do a little bit for those of you who are newbies. Up on the top right-hand corner of your screen should be a little arrow. It looks like it's a white arrow around a red. Is that red, Deb? A red box? Okay. And if you click on that, that will move this little window in and out, in and out. And all you need to do is basically sit back and listen. Now, there is one box you should take a look at. You can see it if you hit that little button, so now the panel is out. Hopefully it is out. And also, what I send me one, okay, I can hear you loud and clear. Loud and clear. Okay, good. So we're good there. Super duper. All right, then we'll move right along. I'm also recording this, and there may be a way to watch the recording later on. I'm not sure. We'll see how that pans out. So most of you, oh good, I can see everybody. Hello, Craig. Push-ups like 20. Jason Kahn. You're right, Jason. Let me do them afterwards so I don't pass out. Anyway, glad to be here. Glad you're staying up late. We did this for the guys on the West Coast and also for people in Australia. They're just getting out of bed this morning. This was obviously a pretty popular one. We had a lot of people asking to tune in. So the ACDC Free Fire webinar, Chevy Volt. You're looking at a picture of our Volt right there. And let's see if we can get my strings to see if I can get the screen to change a little bit. It's always a little tricky in the first one. There we go. Okay, cool. So what started this whole mess? How did we get this thing going where people are saying, geez, what's going on with the Volt? It had a perfect launch. It's been sold for exactly 1 year. By the way, in Europe, it's known as an Opel Ampera or a Vauxhall Ampera. GM probably didn't do the right thing by saying they're going to stop the sales of these cars in Europe. I don't know why they did that. It'd get the pundits all excited. At any rate, so as you know, there's a Volt, there's an Opel Ampera, and a Vauxhall Ampera. Vauxhall is England right-hand drive. Okay, so who started all this big mess? Well, this was this crash. Sorry about the noise. The static will go away. There was this crash that happened, as you know. Hopefully you read about it. If not, I'll give you some brief information. But they were crash testing this after it already got its 5-star ratings. It has a 4-star rating, I believe, in the front, 5 everywhere else. So what's the media saying? Well, it could be a Democratic cover-up. I heard that on the news the other day. I do watch Fox News. Is it President Obama's fault? Probably. He's blamed for everything. Why not? GM knew about it all along. Didn't want to tell anybody. I read that in the headlines. Claybrook, who used to run the National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration, she weighed in saying it's those bums, the bums she used to work for. EVs are just so dangerous they should never be sold. They're all going to blow up. Or the Volt was rushed to market and they didn't have time to build a good battery. So those are all the things that I've heard. We can weigh them out here. Now, what do first responders do when they get to the scene of an accident? It's probably worthy to know. One of the things that they do is, and in no uncertain order, pretty much they try to secure the car, shut it off, chock certain wheels, any car. Look for any hazards. Is there gasoline spilling out, sparks, fires? They want to hurt themselves. Then look for survivors. Hopefully they made it through, airbags and all. Then they'll disconnect the 12-volt battery, typically wait a minute if they think they can for the airbags to discharge. They don't go off when they're cutting through some metal. Remove the passengers, get them in an ambulance, and then the tow truck driver deals with it from there. So what's new when it comes to hybrids or EVs in terms of getting people out of these cars? So right now we're talking about first responder stuff. Well, first off, if it's hybrids, there's cut points, certain place they don't want you to cut. They want you to go through orange cables. Maybe no engine sounds. You have to be sure the engine's actually shut off, that it doesn't just take off. What about electric vehicles, which of course is what we're here for? Well, it's the same as above, but now they want us to discharge the high voltage battery. Well, to what level? Do they want it at 20% stated charge, 10, and what's that all about? And how do we do it? How do we do that? So we're going to discuss this as part of this program. How is that going to be done? So quick specs, most of you know it's a $40,000 car, goes 40 miles on EV range. I told you in cold weather you won't get that. I'm getting 25 miles. 1.4 liter gasoline generator, so it's got a gas tank. It's got a whole drivetrain. 360-volt battery pack in the back was sort of in the middle, T-shaped. You can charge it with 2 different levels of chargers. It goes about 300 miles, and someday the government's going to give me back $7,500 because I spent so much dough. That'll be nice. We'll see. So, for those who don't have any information at all, let me go back and get my little yellow marker that I love to use. Just 1 second here. So the battery pack is this guy, right over here. Let me try that. Let me try that little marker again. Hold on a second. Didn't seem like I grabbed it. Grab the marker. Oh, there I see. Okay. Get it that time. Sorry, your screen went blank. That happens from time to time. It'll come back. I'm not too sure why. There we go. Okay. Looks like we may be in business. Keep moving. All right. So the battery pack is here. It's a T-shaped device. Just this morning, I was taking the wheel off my Volt. I had a flat tire. I had a chance to crawl underneath again and take a look to see how close it is to the different subframes. The part of the battery that looks like it could get crushed the easiest is right in here, or right in there, because it's the closest to the outside of the car. You can actually physically see the end of that battery hanging out underneath the bottom of the car. But anyway, that's where the battery is. We're going to be concentrating tonight on that battery, what's going on there. Another picture of it here. So we've got this T-shaped battery in the middle, for those who remember the EV1, similar design. And then we've got all kinds of other high-voltage components, and we're going to discuss those as well, if they played a part in this fire situation that they've got. Somebody wanted to know how much coolant. I had an email today. I was too damn busy to help you with that information. 7.4 quarts of coolant goes in the battery pack. It has its own radiator, its own pump, a whole cooling system, you'll see. So it does have coolant in the battery pack. Again, if you don't know anything about the Volt, here's some quick ideas, what it looks like, how fast it is. Quick note here, premium fuel, ACDC disagrees. If that gasoline engine is going to be running once every couple of months because you have to go more than 35 miles, then regular fuel should be just fine. Check with dealership first because they say premium. If you want to know more about that, do some research, send me an email. We can talk offline. I want to get back to the battery thing. Let's see here. Where's the cough drops? There they are. Before you buy a Volt, it's smart to put a battery charger at your house because you can charge it up a lot faster. I want to talk a little bit about the battery charger itself. Not that this is part of the fire, but there's potentials for issues there. So this is Bob. Bob's my buddy. Ran down to Worcester, got ourselves a permit, installed a charger. That's the side of my house last winter. It'll be looking like that soon. You can buy the charger for a Volt from SPX. Surprise, surprise, only $500. But guess what? If you don't own a Volt, they won't sell you one. They do have other ones, priced a little bit higher. So anyway, that's a story on that charger. By the way, it's not really a battery charger. For those of you who want to be informed of what's going on, which I assume all of you do, it's really an EVSE, electric vehicle supply equipment. It doesn't charge the battery at all. The charger, as you will see, is in the car itself. This is just getting electricity to the charger. The charger then will handle the charging of the car. But everybody's going to call it a charger. If we go back one, you'll see they even call it a charge station, even though it isn't. So that's the new name we're going to use. That's what it is, and that's what it'll be, even though that's not what it does. Okay. When you charge your Volt off the grid, you plug in your EVSE. That brings AC electricity down to the charger, which is sitting over here. The charger then turns it into DC, plugs in the front of the battery, and all the charging is done through that port. You're just bringing it some electricity from the grid. You'll see for first responders, if you're interested, or just if you want to know, if this is the front windshield of the car, okay, and there's my steering wheel, right there is a green light, one little light, okay, right? You'll see through the glass. If it's solid green, it means that the car is charging up right now and that battery is live hooked up to the grid. If it's a short blinking green light, very short, that means that the battery is fully charged and it's just staying plugged in. We'll talk about later why that's important. If it's got a very long blink, like a second in between, it's ready to be charged up, but the customer, the owners, decided not to charge it till the rates go down. If it seems yellow, it's not charging at all, there's something wrong with the charger or the EVSE that you hooked it up to, and you need to go find out what happened. That's what little light means. If you get the little charger, well, it comes with this charger in the trunk. Every electric car has a little 110-volt charger. At least I should say the Leaf does and the Volt does, and there's more coming. You can plug that into any outlet, and then you can drag it outside the window and charge up your car. But if these lights over here are red, like these guys right there, then it's not going to charge because this one evidently had a bad ground. So there's a lot of intelligence built into even charging up the battery from the beginning. That's true on all new electric cars. This is a picture of the charger itself. You'll see where it's sitting in the car, not a particularly great spot, but they ran out of room. And this is where my AC electricity comes in from my grid, and then I can send out 120 or another 120, which totals 240. And as you can see, it's water cooled. We've got coolant going in. And there's also a 12-volt charger in here because when the battery's being charged, the 12-volt system has to also work for heating and cooling purposes. Now, one thing I'm proud of is my enormous height. The battery and Craig are both about 5'5". Isn't that interesting? That's kind of what we have in common. There's a service plug. This is not a first responder thing typically. It's for a technician, a dismantler. I work a lot with salvage yards. This is just open up the console, sit down in the driver's seat, open the console up. There's a little plastic tray inside that just pops out. It's fairly easy to get to. A little tiny screwdriver prying on each side pops out. Then you'll see what looks like a nice little diaper, another way to put it. That diaper's been flipped forward, but that'll be over the top of this. I'm assuming it's there, and then if there's any spilled liquid from your console, you put a bottle of water in there, and it explodes. It doesn't really look like it could ever get in there, but they're taking some precautions, and put this little diaper over the top of it. And then we have this orange plug that fits down inside, so we've got the orange plug that fits in the receptacle, and this connects one battery pack to another. As you'll see, there's like 3 different parts to the battery pack there. Kind of typical. It does have 3 radiators. One radiator we're using is going to be for the inverter, power controller, and the transmission. It shares a radiator. Then we have a radiator for the battery itself. I want to say it includes the charger. It probably does, but I'd have to go look at the schematic to be sure. And then we have a radiator for the internal combustion engine called an ICE, although General Motors prefers to call it a generator, which then confuses everybody that I teach because generators are inside transmissions on Priuses. So there's just some terminology there we need to get straightened out someday. So how does a battery actually cool? Well, again, here's my battery pack over here. Okay, so I've got this battery pack deal. And then I've got a pump, a 12-volt pump, that's going to be putting coolant through the pump. And you know, this is where the controversy is on this battery pack. We've got a 3-way valve that can actually modulate between all 3 positions. We have liquid coolant, that's ethylene glycol and water, same thing you put in your engine, going through a radiator, a little surge tank, overflow tank. It comes back. And if you're driving around on a hot day, the coolant is going to circulate around and around through the radiator to keep the battery cool. Cooler, the better. If you're on a really, really hot day accelerating up a hill, this valve can move and bring it through a chiller. It's just another evaporator that runs off what? An AC compressor. So this vehicle, if you're familiar with the Ford Escape Hybrid, it has 2 evaporators working off of 1 compressor. Think of it this way, but the chiller or the evaporator is there just for the battery pack, the coolant, the liquid. And then on a really, really cold day like it is today in Massachusetts, it didn't get too hot here, you drive around in your Volt, the pump will push coolant through, and then the heater here, which is also 12 volts, is going to supply, I may be wrong on that, better double check that one. The heater is going to heat up the liquid coolant and try to warm the battery up. According to General Motors, you got about a 20-degree F up or down. So if it is 32 degrees F outside and I leave it plugged in so this can all operate even when the battery's charged up, the heater will be on, I might be able to bring it to 40 F, but not much more than that. If it's 110 degrees outside, I'm in Yuma, Arizona with my Volt, I leave it plugged in, it could cool it down to possibly as low as 90, but not much more than 20 either way. So it's just in that matter to know that when you plug this thing in, there's a lot going on. Even when the thing is finished charging, it tries to maintain battery temperature. Now, if you haven't seen the battery, it's a beautiful picture. Compliments of GM, thank you. You'll see one with a cover on it. So at the tail end here, this is where all the electricity is coming in and out, and that's up by your driver's right foot. Then you have a whole lot of modules. There's 3 cells per module, 96 modules. 96 or 98, and that brings us up to about 360 volts, although my scan tool shows as much as 400 volts when the thing is fully charged up. There's also, if you read all the news about the battery, they're talking about some possible issues up on top. Because this is lithium, they do charge, individually cool, individually discharge, and individually balance each module. Again, modules have 3 cells inside in parallel, okay? And each, if you're not familiar, lithium-ion cells are worth about 3.7 volts, plus or minus a little bit. So it's quite an elaborate battery. Another picture of it here, very similar looking thing. They haven't put a case on it yet, so you can see this is sitting down in a big steel case. And then there's a cover you'll see later on that goes over this battery. And this battery slides in from underneath the bottom of the car. This is an early prototype, so it doesn't do it really justice. But just to give you an idea how this thing slides down the tunnel, and now we have a little disconnect plug there, sort of where the console is. Now, this is a good picture. This is what the battery looks like just before installation. So after it's put together, this is a fiberglass composite cover that goes on, gets bolted on, and then of course this is for heat reflection to keep the heat from getting into the body of the car, because you're sitting fairly close to this battery when you're driving inside the car. It's down the middle. Most of these pictures, as you can imagine, I found on the internet, researching this, getting ready for tonight's little broadcast. We have over here is the battery pack itself after a pretty severe front-end collision. And obviously they're showing you there's no damage to the battery, but the poor drivetrain got pretty hammered. This is a picture off GM's website. This is a steel plate that all the cells bolt to. And then this is what bolts to the bottom of the car. Then you've got your modules, and you've got the big fiberglass piece on top. What they're showing you here is the side impact protection, and where they put in some I want to say martensite. I'm not sure I'm saying it right, but it's a very strong steel. So it doesn't crush, and that's for side impact protection. Again, if you were to see this battery being removed from the car, there's a special holder that it sits on. This is probably one from the factory, but in the field, it's going to look like a transmission jack, a big one with a big holder. Goes underneath, you unbolt it, and it drops down. After you drain out the coolant, disconnect everything. This is not a class on how to fix cars. Okay, the battery system, again, about 5.5 feet long. It weighs a good 435 pounds, lithium-ion, liquid-cooled, 288 prismatic cells, again, 3 cells to a module, and I believe the math brings that out to 96 or 98 modules. You also have an AGM, absorbed glass mat battery, in the back, which is part of this conversation. So here's the battery itself. Again, if you're taking it out of the car, bit of a holder, disconnect everything, drop it down, it's heavy. Individual modules. Here you can start to see some of the cooling. There's some cooling lines that connect some modules together. This one here is connecting 2 different batteries, positive and negative. That's the disconnect. You stop current from flowing. This is accessed, as you know, by a technician. And so there's basically your 3 sections that you have. Another view of it here. One section will drop in, coolant lines get in, get clamped together, and an idea if you haven't seen it. Now here's kind of getting the crux of the matter, where it looks like some of the issues are. This, I explained this in my classes as just a fire door. This, I say it's aluminum, it may be steel, I've never held one in my hand. But this metal plate sits in between each module. You have coolant running through, obviously, these pieces here, and that's bringing away the heat. It's also to protect from fires. If there is a fire in one module, that should not spread to the next module, because this plate here is protecting. It's like having a fire door inside a hotel room. Cell balancing is done, again, with a lot of circuit boards on top, so they can monitor each individual module. If one's slightly undercharged, they can get it up to speed. From an electrical technical standpoint, a balanced battery is a happy battery. On the business end of things, this would unbolt from the end of the battery. Again, it's up where your feet are, where you might think of the firewall. Coolant lines come in here. There's some 12-volt pieces there. And then we're going to be able to tap in, get energy in, get some energy out. Aha. As most of you know, I work with Midtronics. I'm not on their payroll. They hire me as consultant to get the HYB 1000 out in the marketplace. This was on display at their booth at Apex back the beginning of November, not long ago. The first time I had seen it. And what this says, GRX 5100, in case you can't read it very well, hybrid battery pack diagnostic station. This is being built for the Chevy Volt and the Nissan Leaf, and virtually every high voltage lithium-ion battery, according to some pending legislation, not approved yet, probably will, when you're shipping lithium-ion batteries for recycling, they do not want any energy in the battery. So this has 4 gigantic resistors. You can see them through some metal plates as I was examining this. They're probably as big as half of your arm, and huge blowers on either side. And this can hook up to the positive and negative cables of any high voltage battery, nickel metal hydride, lithium, it doesn't matter, and discharge it. So again, it's designed to discharge the battery for recycling purposes and for shipping. Not for a new battery that's going to be shipped to a new car, you wouldn't do that, but for one at end of life. You'll see how this plays a part of the story. Now, when will the ICE start up? I wasn't sure this slide was necessary, but in case you don't know much about electric cars or this particular car, the EV portion of the car drives on pure electricity until it gets to 20% state of charge. This is about the Volt. If you put it in mountain mode, it reserves more state of charge for climbing big mountains. It starts the engine at 40%. The engine will also start up if you open the hood. It's for technician safety. If the temperature is below 25, it hasn't happened yet here, so I'll verify that soon, and you have the heat on, it's going to run the engine to supplement the electric heater. There may be other conditions, but nothing that I know of. I'm going to go over here right now and check. Okay, everybody's down there. Chris Merkel says 360 volts. Thank you very much. Phil Fournier's up there. My screen's not changing. Hopefully it's caught up now. Yeah, it's kind of low on that. Okay, any other little messages? Yeah, I know. I got to do 20 push-ups being late. That's the truth. I will do that too. Okay. If you haven't seen under the hood, again, it's a very Prius-like arrangement, 4-cylinder transmission on the side, AC compressor hanging over here, pretty much what it looks like underneath. GM has had to defend the Volt before. I'm going to do this kind of quick because I want to wrap this up here in the next 10 minutes. GM's been defending the Volt. There was some miscommunication, I'm saying it nicely, about how the transmission works. In case you haven't caught up on the last, this was a year ago, all right, the last time GM had to defend itself, there was this complicated transmission. People didn't understand how it worked. Here's a real quick lesson. This, by the way, is, I forget this guy's name. He's an instructor up at Mott Community College, Flint, Michigan. This is a Saturn Vue 2-mode. He had his hands on it. I flew up there. I was able to play around with this, get involved with it. They no longer have it, but they have some of the parts. Just a quick story here. You know, I'm a storyteller. The transmission here basically was designed for the Saturn Vue, and then they were able to take this and modify it extensively to get it into the Volt, in case you're wondering where it came from. This, by the way, is just one of many pumps. They're all the same part number. There's 3 of them that move coolant around there. I'll tell you more about how we know a little bit about this car. So real quick transmission course for you guys who understand planetary gear sets. Here we go, just to get rid of the last controversy from a year ago. On the Sun gear, we've got electric motor B or the traction motor, and when it spins and you hold the ring gear, the planetary carrier moves, and that goes through the gear set, off to the wheels, and the car goes down the road on electricity. It's pretty amazing. So that's what we basically call this Volt transmission. One planetary gear set, 3 clutches, C1, which is going to grab the ring gear and hold it into the transmission case. C2 allows the ring gear to connect to this electric motor, motor A, which is a generator, and then C3, which that electric motor can then get a hold of the crankshaft. So the crankshaft connects here, 3 clutches. So there's 3 basic modes. I'll go through them real quick. Mode 1, the Volt is charged up. It's got some power inside the battery pack. It's above its 20% or above 40% mountain mode. What happens? Pretty simple. The big battery produces DC power. The inverter turns it into 3-phase AC, sends it to electric motor. It spins the Sun gear. The ring gear can't move. The clutch is holding it here. The car goes down the road, forward and reverse. Mode 2, this is a smart move on GM part. The battery sends power here, and it sends power to both electric motors, A and B. The gasoline engine is still shut off. It's not doing anything. And this particular clutch C2 allows motor A to spin the ring gear in one direction. Motor B spins the sun gear in the opposite direction. The car still goes down the road. Why do we do this? Lower the speed of motor A and B, and the car becomes more efficient. It loses less energy. Smart move. Okay, mode 3, extended driving range. This is when the gasoline engine kicks in. It starts up, and it has a clutch that connects it to motor A. It's a generator. It only sends power to the battery to maintain the 20 or 40% or whatever mode you have it set into. It's going to be one or the other. And the battery continues to spin, send power to motor B, and it spins the sun gear. It runs exactly like it did in mode 1, and the gasoline engine is just a generator. That's it. Mode 4 was a controversy. Mode 4 takes the crankshaft, connects it to motor A. Motor A then connects to the ring gear. The ring gear spins in one direction, and this can be either a motor or a generator according to my scan tool data when I'm checking the car out. And this motor still spins the sun gear, and the car still drives down the highway. But in this particular case, maybe someone can send me what the answer is here if you know what it is, Chris. A certain percentage of the power is still electric coming from the battery. A certain percentage of the power is electrically derived from the crankshaft through this motor, but there is, and I'm going to make it up, I'm going to say 10%, I don't know what it is. 10% of the power driving the car comes from the crankshaft of the ICE. That's when people said, it's not an electric car, it's really a hybrid. Who cares? It's actually more efficient this way, so I kind of like efficiency. Give it to me any way you can. It's fine with me. So that's the quick modes on there. Okay, we broke our Volt. This is our Chevy Volt. In fact, we've broken it twice. When the motor is running, A is a generator, the engine's making efficiency. Chris just sent that in. Chris, you and I are going to chat offline sometime. I've seen some other things on my scan tool I need help with. But you're right, that makes perfect sense. So those are 4 modes. How do we break our Volt? I broke our Volt by messing around with it, doing things you're not supposed to do. And the software is smart enough to go, if you keep doing this, you're going to get electrocuted. So it takes the controller for the big battery, takes it offline. The car doesn't start until you get a factory scan tool, the correct information that you need, go back in, release some security code so it comes back online, and then get a kick in the ass to learn what to do. This was when we first bought this car, and we were just playing games. We didn't kill ourselves, but we were doing things we're not supposed to do. So we learned our lessons. This, by the way, is a service plug. That's removed to disconnect or take the big battery and basically split it in half. Here's the point I wanted you to make. What you're looking at now is the hatch is open. There's no spare tire. That's another sad story for me. Got a flat the other day. 3 days to get it fixed. Oh, well. I'll stop pissing and moaning. This is the back where you open the hatch up, remove this big plastic piece. Oops, sorry about that. As soon as I hit the mouse. And what you're looking at here is a DC-DC converter that has cables going over to the battery. This is battery plus, battery negative. Okay, this will come back into play when we talk about first responders. In the middle, I've got a really nice sound system made by Bose right here in Massachusetts. Lightweight, but basically DC-DC supply, bring in some air, bring it through a blower, 12-volt battery AGM. That's in the back. In the front, covers, interlocks everywhere, if you're familiar with that. Put our logos on it. There's Mr. Reinvolt. Next up your voltage will be at his place. But, not much going on under the hood. A lot of cables, not much you can see, not much you can do. 3 radiator caps here. Okay, 1, 2, 3. It kind of gets back to the story. This is our Volt. First time we just buy a brand new $43,000 car. We're doing up your voltage. Said, okay, guys, take it apart. So they did as much as we possibly could and felt like we could get it back together again, but allowed us to get our first look at this. Okay, so we took a look. Again, when some of the covers are off, you can kind of see it. Inverter assembly, your cables. Those of you with hybrid experience, this is looking pretty familiar. A top view, nicely done package. They ran out of room. The car could have been a little bit bigger, but it wasn't. They had to hang things where you maybe wouldn't want to hang it like this. I know I'm laughing. That's the charger. No, that's just a plastic bumper around it. There's not another piece of metal or styrofoam in front of this guy. So when you crash the car, hit the other side. It's a lot cheaper, okay? Now, we didn't take the battery out. I was cautioned not to do it by my friends at GM They said, Craig, you can take the battery pack out. Want to look at it, that's fine. But when you put it back in, it's hard to bleed the system. So wait a while till we get some better service procedures for aftermarket people in service, I should say. So I've taken them up on that advice. We took the cover off. This is just a skid plate underneath. Okay. Then we could kind of see the battery here. I'll give you another picture of this. So here's our Chevy Volt with all the plastic removed from the bottom. The skid plate is gone. Again, this is the battery portion. This is the steel that's part of the battery. You can see it expanding back here a little bit about in this area. Just to back up the view a little bit, you see the coolant hoses, which we did not remove. But if we were to take the battery out, the coolant hoses would come off. Coolant would go everywhere. We need a drain bolt on this thing. And some orange cables, and off we go. In mode 2, if you drive the ring gear the opposite direction of the sun has to spin faster to keep the carrier output member at the same speed. Are you sure that mode is correct? Sometimes I'm never sure of anything, Jeff Oakes. And I appreciate the input. If you want to get me offline, we can chat about this. But my thinking was, if you spin the ring gear backwards, spin the sun gear the opposite direction, then you can still drive the car with less RPMs on the motor B, which is the drive motor. But we can go over that later. I like the way you're thinking, though. Keep me honest. Over here is just a view looking up into this, if you want to call it the tunnel, where we'd normally see a drive shaft, is where you're looking at the battery, and you can just see basic connections. Okay. Now, this is interesting. I'm lucky enough to find this Volt. It's not mine. It's pretty hammered in the front. There's one view. There's another view of it here. And I've had a chance to already work on this. I'm going back to it. It's at a college. I'm not going to tell you where right now. I didn't get their permission to tell you. But I'm going to be back at this college in January, early in January, tearing this thing apart. This thing really got hammered. It was bought at auction. It totaled it completely. But here's some interesting things. These are some of the coolant lines you're reading about in the news stories you're reading. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but from what we can tell, this is a chiller or a cooler that allows us to bring some coolant through this device and cool down the battery. I think that's the cooler. If anybody knows if it is, tell me. We'll find out for sure when we tear this poor wretched one apart. No, it's not. Okay. It's something else. We'll find out what it is later on. Some more pictures of this. We took the inverter off, just kind of laid it on its side, had a broken motor mount. The car fared pretty well. This thing got slammed. But here's the point I want to show you. This was involved in an accident. The first responders went out. They didn't hack this thing. They didn't cut it. This cable here was disconnected. Now, there is a piece that's off the site of this diagram, but there's a cable on the side when you open the hatch, and that's where the cut points are. If first responders don't know that, they're not going to cut it. This has been connected a couple times, and the car had power. We didn't look, but we know the cables weren't cut, because obviously if you connect the battery back up, it still wouldn't work. This is just, one first responder. This car was out of New York, by the way, taking care of a Volt in an accident, doing what they know how to do, which is disconnecting a 12-volt battery, probably for airbags as we go on. Now, SAE has been a pretty big help to me, and I just want to always acknowledge them. They've been hugely supportive of what I'm trying to do. This is a picture of a bunch of guys I get together with recently. If you recognize them, that's where that Volt is, okay? But we'll move on. So I want to mention something when I open it up for questions. That'll be next. And I want to get into more of the dialogue. So if you haven't been to the movies, rent Who Killed the Electric Car. That's a good movie to watch. It's a little unfair to GM. But then find The Revenge of the Electric Car. All right? When you can find that, go watch it. I just saw that. This is a movie theater in Sacramento, California. So here's the deal. Somebody must have a question. We haven't even talked about the controversy yet. I just wanted to get into some of the technology of the battery. So if somebody wants me to unmute them, just type in unmute. You don't have to put your name. I'll see it. And then I can go unmute you, and we can have a conversation. If anybody wants to get involved with this, just let me know, and I will do it. But I just need to say the word unmute. You just type it in, or you can call Deb if you're not sure what you're doing. Okay, send me an email question. What college? Yeah, I want to keep the college private, so I didn't ask. Unmute Don Presler. Okay, Don, let me find you. There's a whole bunch of people here. There it is. John, Don, where are you? 1 second, Don. I'll find you. That's a little tiny keyboard. Don Presler. Hello, Don. Are you there? Hey, Don, can you hear me? We've unmuted you. Okay, Don, that didn't work. Call me at 508-963-1132. You must not have a microphone or something. Okay? So that didn't work, but call me at 508-963-1132. Who else wants to get unmuted? Nobody else? Come on, somebody must have a question. I don't want to listen to myself talk all night. The phone number to call, I feel like a disc jockey here. 508-963-1132. Call in your questions. There we go. We don't know what we don't know. Phil Fournier. Isn't that true, Phil? I figured maybe you'd want to ask some questions about what you've been reading. But if no one read anything, I can go back to that slide in my mind and tell you what's going on out there. I just didn't want to express my opinion right away. I wanted to have you kind of express your own. So, but if there isn't anybody, you know me, I can talk a mile a minute. I make my money just yakking. Let's see here. No one else wants to. Don, I'm going to mute you back up here, buddy. Okay, let's see. Let me try to find somebody I know, unmute you, and see if you'll talk to me. There we go. Bob Rodriguez. Are you there? Can you chat with me? You have a microphone? No? Doesn't have a mic? Okay, Bob, we're going to unmute you. Mute you back up again, I should say. All right, I'm just looking for people that I know. I probably know all of you. Shame on me for not knowing all of you. Got some hand raisers. Okay, let me try that. Daniel, you got a microphone. Hey, Daniel, just speak. Maybe I can hear you. Just say hello. Yes. Hi, Mike. Hey, Daniel. Daniel Cortigiano? I'm not saying that right.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Any questions about this stuff?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was connected, so I got in there late, so I'm sorry about that.
Not a problem. What have you been reading in the media about this Chevy Volt? You had a chance where you are? What part of the country are you in?
I'm in Connecticut.
Not far away.
I'm a little new to this, so I just wanted to get familiar with everything about it.
Okay. Are you a technician? What do you do?
Yeah, I own a shop in Fairfield, Connecticut.
Okay, gotcha. Have you had a Volt come in yet? Probably not.
No, not at all.
Driven one?
I'm looking to get some education on this stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, if you missed this, I'm going to try to post this. We're recording this. I'll try to get this posted some way you can watch it again if you missed it. Okay. But you don't have any questions, then I'm going to mute you and talk to somebody else.
Okay, great.
All right. Okay. I still have to do my push-ups, I'm told here. Daniel Zinn. Someone else has to do push-ups. Okay. I have a mic. Phil Fournier. All right. Let me find Phil. If you don't know Phil Fournier, he's a trainer as well, and does a lot of training in Spanish, but speak to me in English. There we go. Hey, Phil, you on the line? All right.
So.
Yes, he is. Yes, I think everybody can hear you. So that was just kind of a quick kind of introduction. It wasn't that quick. What are you hearing out there in California on this Gulf state?
I have an interest in it, and I try to read past, this just the very first part of what they said.
Yep.
And what I understand is the car was hit hard
Yep.
and then allowed to sit while coolant leaked into the battery that had not been discharged.
Yep.
I wasn't clear on whether or not it had been interlock removed.
Yep.
That part I wonder about. Did they remove the interlock?
Well, here's what I can tell you, and I can tell you everything. There's no confidential stuff going on between me and GM to tell you right off the bat. When I've talked to General Motors, and I do this often by driving in my Volt and pushing the button. Excuse me, I'm gonna get a drink here. My voice is going out. 1 second. Be right with you guys. The Volt has OnStar as standard equipment, so I've been able to push the little button while I'm driving, economize on my time, and ask them. And they were pretty helpful at getting the information a couple of weeks ago. Now there's an investigation, so as you can imagine, they don't want to say too much. The question I wanted to know, that was never answered, is was the 12-volt battery disconnected? But let me go back and kind of fill a few people in. You still there, Phil?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let me just fill a few people in because I think some people haven't read much. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and I was going to read you the article, but I've misplaced it in my office, back in May did some crashing on the vault way after the 5-star crashing was done. The 5-star crash is done before you sell the vehicle. So that's 16, 17 months ago. A lot of vaults got crashed. They ended up with a 5-star rating in every part of the car except the front, and the front was a 4-star. And if anybody knows that that's different, just type it in and I'll correct it. And so it got a perfectly good rating and off it went. Well, the National Highway Safety and Traffic Administration decided to keep punching the side of this thing as hard as they can, harder and harder, to see what would happen, which makes perfect sense. They own some. Let's beat them up, see what happens. So back in June, I think it was June, or May or June, they hammered this thing. They knew they damaged the battery. Coolant leaked out. I don't know if it was inside or outside. I've heard conflicting reports, but the car was placed somewhere. Nothing was done, and my question to GM was, what did they do after they damaged it? Did they disconnect the 12-volt? What did they do? At that point, back in June, from what I can gather, General Motors did not have a policy of discharging the battery and making sure that there was no energy in it. That's been since then. They've come up with something. I got a phone call here too, Phil. Hold on just a second. Yeah. Yeah.
And he has some interesting information.
Okay, I'm going to kind of do this with 3 people. Let me get this headset kind of halfway out of my ear. Okay. Hello there, Ed. Yeah. 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 Okay, I'm gonna put this phone down and just tell people what you said, so then I'll continue chatting, okay? But I won't be able to hear you for a few minutes. I'm gonna set the phone down. Okay, that was Ed Chabot, who's followed some of it, and his question is, was it the accident that caused the fire? Let me just back up a little bit because I think we're a little bit torn around here a bit. So let me just kind of, for anybody who doesn't have any knowledge, the Volt passed, again, all the safety tests, everything's fine. Then they go ahead and do more crashing. They finally damage it to the point where they've ruptured some coolant lines. The battery's been penetrated by some metal from something, and the car sits, and 3 weeks later, the battery catches on fire, and it burns that car and a couple cars next to it. They didn't tell anybody, which is why this whole thing is the Democrats, what's going on with the bomb, all those things I said in the beginning if you tuned in on time. At any rate, let's see, let me get another one here. Brad, we'll just read what it comes in. Just reading this, they come in. Do not use tap water in the cooling system. Requires premixed X-Cool. That would make sense. The cooling plates are thinner than a credit card. I didn't know that. Brad Lynn. Thank you, Brad Lynn. So obviously the National Safety Administration, now they're doing an investigation, probably from their own work, and nobody knows the answer. This is why I kind of want to gather you all up tonight to see what we know. But when a lithium-ion battery sits full of energy that's damaged any battery, who knows what could happen? And I'm trying to keep my opinions out of this. What I wanted to know was, did the 12-volt battery, was it disconnected? And I'll tell you why. And there may be an article in Fender Bender magazine, if you get that I helped write for a guy a few days ago. There comes a time when these cars are sitting. You still there, Phil, by the way?
Yes, I am.
Okay, all right. There comes a time when these cars are sitting, and I just want to mention, because it's wintertime in most of, at least North American hemisphere, where a Volt does better by being plugged in all the time. Because Chevy spent a lot of time and money in engineering to get really an excellent thermal system. If you leave it plugged in, like I said earlier, it can maintain the temperature of the battery. Now, I've got 2 conflicting reports from 2 different guys who work for GM. Okay, one guy tells me that when it's not plugged in, because you can plug it in, but it's really cold, and your battery, let's say it has a 80% state of charge. When it's sitting there, the computers will come alive, for you techies, and then it will look at the temperature of the battery, the temperature of the, let me just turn this thing off here. I can't do that. The temperature of the battery, the temperature of the ambient air, and when the battery starts to cool itself down too much, the 12-volt battery will supply power to the computers. The computers will turn the battery on. The big battery can do that. The battery basically feeds off itself using its own energy to supply power to the 12-volt system. So the 12-volt system can then warm up the battery, and the battery will stay warm as long as it can to 50% state of charge. I think that may be true. By pure coincidence, 3 or 4 days ago, yep, exactly, okay, I got it, somebody confirmed that. The other day, it was getting pretty cold here in Massachusetts. I took my Volt out for a spin with my wife, and we parked the car. It had 3 miles of range left in it. I had no place where I could plug it in. I was at a Christmas party. So I left it outside, really cold. I went back 5 hours later. The 3 miles of range was gone. I started the car up, and the engine started up, and off I went. So something was draining the big battery. It's probably trying to keep itself warm. If that's true, and it looks like it is true that that's how it works, that's the one thing that's never been reported. If you read everything that's out there, go to SAE, everything you can. Google it like crazy. Of course, I have the time to do that. It's what I do for a living. You guys don't have time for that crap. So I'm wondering if they didn't disconnect the 12-volt battery, put it outside, was the weather cooling down? Did they get a cool night? Did something happen? And then the 12-volt battery said, hey, let's go back and feed off the big battery to keep it warm. Now we have no coolant. We've got damage. Voila, we have a fire. I don't know. That's the only other possibility that I haven't seen in the mainstream. What the mainstream has been reporting is the coolant leaked. I think this is what you were getting at, Phil. The coolant then, the ethylene glycol, so this has been reported a lot the last few days. Ethylene glycol gets into a module. It can become conductive. The module can pass current through the ethylene glycol, and now we have a current path, and now we have a fire. Who knows? Could possibly happen. For those who tuned in the beginning, there was that one picture about Midtronics. Let me stop myself. Phil, was there anything else you wanted to say? Any other
no,
you wanted to make?
My only comment is gasoline cars burn up on a regular basis. It's not an unusual thing. I'm trying to figure out what all the fuss is about.
Yeah.
If a badly wrecked car a week later or however long, there was a passage of time. It wasn't a threat.
Yes. Correct.
Whoever would have been in the car.
That's correct.
So the car burned up later.
Yep.
And now everybody's all, crazy about it. To me, it's like, well, so what?
Yeah, well,
that part I don't get.
I get. Okay, so let's move on that then. I think that's a good train of thought. Because I do a lot of work for first responders and body shops, I've had 3 or 4 body shops call me worried about this, and they said, Craig, if I have a Volt that gets hit pretty hard and comes to my body shop, should I leave it inside? Here's what I said to them. I said, no. Take the Volt, go to a corner of your yard, and clear it away so there's no cars within 10 feet. Park the Volt in that corner, leave everything 10 feet away until we know more. And he said, that's probably good advice. And that's probably what Fender Bender's going to report, because they were on this thing in a heartbeat. The body shops have some concerns, and I think it's legitimate concerns. The first responders have concerns, because they're trying to save people's lives. They want to know, is this thing going to go up into a burning ball of flames the minute this thing gets hit? We know that's not going to happen. But the Midtronics slide that I showed you, I want to comment on this. Midtronics, that tester, discharger, is designed, they have a contract, my understanding is, with Nissan and with General Motors to build a device so they can discharge high-voltage battery packs before shipping to be recycled. That would be the same device, I would guess, that if it becomes a law, because it's in Congress, who knows what's going to happen, right? That at not the scene of an accident, but a salvage yard or a company that deals with heavily hit cars when they're totaled. There's companies that do just that for a living. I work for one of them. That they would have this device on hand, so when any electric car comes in that's going to get totaled, the first thing we do is discharge the battery to 0. They may end up saying that just as a precautionary thing. And I'm also looking at 2 or 3 million electric cars on the road literally within 5 years as a possibility. Let me see. I got a few other people here. Let me see if this guy's still on the phone here. You still there? Nope, he hung up. Okay, good. That took care of that little one. Let me see what other people are typing in. It's because you're not aware of it yet. Okay, so let me just read you some of this. Everybody's pretty active, which is great. Kevin Bell, it's because you're not aware of the cause yet. That's right, we don't know. That's why we're worried. All the info I've read indicates that the National Highway Safety Traffic Administration isn't following recommended discharge procedures. So why are they waving the red flag if not following manufacturers? Okay, let me answer that. That's Don Plesner. I hope you're saying your name right. What I'm reading in this one is it kind of gets back to where Toyota was in trouble 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? Where they know they had issues in Europe. They didn't tell us about the throttles over here. They've got problems. They don't mention it. Everybody likes to be told everything instantly. So again, I'm trying to keep my opinion out of it. But because there was some information that was known in May and June, and it wasn't released until November, that got people upset. That's what I'm reading. There was no procedure that I'm aware of, unless GM can tell me otherwise, back in May and June to discharge these batteries. But what you've read, there's been a lot of writing is lately, and I think it's lately, maybe it's since the first Volt was sold. Oh, it's been out for 1 year, by the way. That as soon as there's a major accident, OnStar knows right away, because OnStar is free for 5 years with this thing. They will see what's going on. If they think there's been some damage, GM releases a team that goes to the car that then discharges the battery. I believe that's true. My question is, was that true a year ago? When did that start to happen? Let me see. Okay. Let me see what's going on here. I'm just reading through some of these. That was Don Plesner's. Okay. So I don't know if GM had recommended procedures for discharging the battery. I did take the time before this webinar tonight to read through the entire PDF of safety in an accident that they give first responders. There's no mention in there, the current one that I found yesterday, 2 days ago, of discharging the big battery. But they make it very clear on disconnecting the 12-volt battery and all the other precautions. It's the usual document you see on any hybrid or electric car. Let me read a few more things here. Gary Thomas, is it possible the fuel tank was involved in the fire? No. Actually had a chance to tour the factory that makes the fuel tanks for the Fisker and the Volt less than 2 weeks ago right outside of Montreal. And it's a very, very thick steel gas tank for lots of reasons, but that was not the problem. I think discharging a damaged HV battery could cause a fire, Daryl Hanlon. I imagine it could if you've got some damage. It's all new to us. Edward Snyder, hi Craig, I remember the first Nissan van had a problem overheating. They said the coolant could actually burn. I remember that Nissan van, they recalled every one of them and they gave them their money back. Let's see, GM discharge any battery. Let's see. Okay. Right, okay, so what I got was, it's true that was any major damage, GM sent somebody out right away. I mean, they probably hop on a plane and go. Any hard crashes out of this country on Volts? I don't think there's any cars outside of Canada and the United States, to my knowledge. There was a few shipped over to Europe. I don't think they're in anybody's hands. They were supposed to be delivered this month in December. A company I work for in Amsterdam has one on order. Had one for a long time. Would disconnecting the battery be the same as discharging it? Daniel Cortaggio. I assume you mean the big battery. No, when you pull the disconnect switch, you still have a lot of energy. So rather than one big battery, if you pull that orange plug, you have two smaller batteries. But both of those batteries would still be certainly dangerous. So let's see. Anybody else here want to get unmuted? You still there, Phil? I'm going to mute you back up again. Anything else, Phil, before I get you off?
No, that's
No.
it.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
All right. Now, does anybody else want to say something to everybody? Feel free. If anybody wants to jump on, just type in unmute me, and I'll know who you are. I'm looking at a control panel, and I'll be able to do that. Let's see. We'll switch slides here for a second. What's on the next slide? Who knows? No, no one's saying unmute me. Okay. All right. There's the phone number. You can call Deb again. The phone's right here. Actually, she took off. All right, so let me see if I can kind of wrap this up, and then I'm going to give you a little commercial if you care, and if you don't care, that's fine with me. It won't be very long. So here's where we stand. If you know somebody who owns a Volt or has a Volt, I think you'd be doing them a service to say, don't worry about this. There's been 0 problems in real-world crashes. The only issues we've had has been, getting hit, sitting for a long time and not taking the right procedures. It's probably a good thing it happened in some ways, because now everybody that pays any attention to this is probably going to be more attentive to that big battery. That's not a bad thing. This just came in. Was there any evidence of orange wire shorted which could contribute to a fire? That's from Ray Cerbricia. Looks Italian. Ray, on hybrid cars, electric cars, when the 12-volt battery is still connected, the computers are still active doing something. If there's any high voltage leak to the chassis ground, and I'm going to make up a number of 30 volts, if it gets over 30 volts, it will open up contactors and turn the big battery off instantly. If there's a dead short between the positive and negative cables somehow through the chassis or touching themselves, then there's a fuse that blows instantly. So there's a lot of protection in hybrid and electric cars on shorts to the frame and shorts within the battery itself. So I don't think that's going to do it. Anyway, to kind of summarize a bit. So if you know some people with GM Volts, I'm still driving mine. I love the car. I know that sounds like I'm probably biased, but it's a damn good car. It's no surprise the media is jumping on this thing. There's people that really didn't want to bail out for GM. There are people who do not like Obama. I mean, they hate his guts. There are people who think this is a Salandra, am I saying that right, deal? The other big deal that the White House is dealing with. So there's a lot of politics wrapped up in this. People bailed out GM, and some people didn't like it. So as far as the technology is concerned, I think you can see what's going on there. There's going to be a fix. GM, because I'm a Volt owner, sent me a letter. They're willing to loan me a car for free. I can trade my car in. They'll buy it back. They've bent over backwards. I pushed OnStar more times in the last 3 days than you could imagine, driving the poor guys nuts. So it looks like GM's doing everything they can. I'm sure it's a surprise to them that this came up. It did. And now, the one thing I do want to say, because this is really this is biased, but it gets under my skin a little bit. Gotta go. Thanks. Okay. If anybody needs to jump off the line, I understand we've been on this thing now for an hour, so whatever time it is. I can see if you're clicking off. So if you gotta go, take off. If you're not, stick around a little bit. I'll probably be 5 more minutes and I'm done. The thing that bothers me about this one is the coolant is being blamed for the problem. Yet the Volt battery pack is the best, most advanced design of any battery in the world, bar none. I've seen nothing that looks better. The Leaf has nothing. It doesn't have air. It doesn't have water. It doesn't have air conditioning. The Leaf battery has no cooling. I call it radiant cooling, just to be nice. The Leaf is completely off the hook. The people who don't understand the technology are now praising the Leaf for being so smart not to use coolant, and General Motors gets kicked in the ass for using coolant which they need. That just kind of drives me nuts, but that's just my own little biased opinion. Okay? All right. Do you still have the warranty on the car? Yeah, I have a warranty on a car because I've ripped it apart. I'm pretty honest with my dealerships. They know who I am, what I do. I ran a shop here in Worcester since the 70s. No one's ever warranted anything I've broken if it was my own fault. If that's your question, Daniel. I think these cars are here for good. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no doubt. For those of you who've taken classes with me, you've heard me say this, and I'll make it quick. If you take the average car today, a brand new car, with an internal combustion engine, it might be 25% efficient on its best day. It's usually 20% efficient. So 20% of the gasoline you use goes forward, 80% is lost somewhere. It's gone. You don't recover it. When you go to hybrids, they run into the 40% efficiency. Not bad. You're right. More efficient, all kinds of reasons. Regenerative braking. When you go to electric, you start at 89%. The starting point for pure electrics, not the Volt, the pure electric cars, the Leafs, the Mitsubishi i, the Ford Fusion, Focus that's coming up, all the electrics, they're so efficient. I was just in Quebec teaching at 2 colleges. And the interesting thing about Quebec, and I forgot about this, they're all hydro. The entire province of Quebec, a lot of people, Montreal is there, all electricity is hydro, every bit of it. So when I was driving a Leaf around up there, working for a company that just has 50 Leafs, a leasing company, and doing some work with those guys, they gave me a Leaf to use for a few days. I plugged it into the hotel, drove around Montreal, had a great time. Deb was with me, and I realized at that moment, you've got hydropower powering the battery's powering the car. That's it. Carbon neutral. We're done. Yes, Daniel, here forever. How soon they get here, I don't know. This bad news doesn't help. Anybody else have a question? You want to call me on a phone? The phone's sitting here. Nobody's on it. 508-963-1132. Any questions about the Volt at all? I'll be happy to answer them. Type them in or call me. So we're going to wait and see what happens. I'll be reading automotive. If there's more, I do a newsletter. This is a lot of work for me to put this together. I'm not complaining. I love doing it. Sorry I was on the line late. Technical problems. So let me tell you a bit about the Volt, and then I'm going to give you one bit of advertising. We're going to hang up and be done. My Volt got a flat tire. I ran into a curb going to buy chicken on Saturday night, and it was a pretty big curb, and it put a slice in the sidewall. Okay. I press OnStar, and OnStar says, okay, we'll send somebody right over. They can't find anybody who wants to do it. The guy that comes over is my buddy, because everybody knows my buddy, Boulevard Garage. And they want him to take the tire off the front, put it on the back, put the rear one on the front because they don't want to jag it up on the truck. They'll damage something, blah, blah, blah. You can guess what we did. Then I bring it to my old garage. Still have a garage. I put it inside. I take the wheel off. I don't see any damage. And this is Sunday. Of course, they're closed for the weekend. No spare, guys. No spare. Then I go up to see our tire up the street. Today's Tuesday. Yeah, yesterday morning at 8 o'clock. Don't have a tire. Don't stock it. I called my local dealership. I won't mention the name. They weren't even nice to me. They don't have a tire, blah, 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 blah. What's up with that? So I told GM in no uncertain terms that if you're going to give me a tire, a car without a spare, would you at least have the dealership keep a tire in stock? So that's the story. I still love my Volt. It's a pain in the ass. I'm going to try to find a full-size donut. Is there such a thing? A donut to fit in the back. Okay, let me just go to the last slide. A little advertising from ACDC. We're done. Up Your Voltage, coming up February 9th through 14th. We'll take the Volt apart again. I will be back from the college and have lots to know about the battery, so that'll be fun. Still seats in that one. $3,600, everything except the airfare. It's going to be at Volt's place in North Carolina. It's going to be nice and warm, hopefully. It'll be really a lot of fun. We'll take 10 payments at $360 a piece, no interest. Got a brand new book working my butt off on this 2012 book. It'll include all kinds of EV stuff. We got a pre-purchase price. If you buy it now, we'll send it to you for the same price as the old one, which is $199 for color, $139 for black and white. That expires the end of December. West Coast Tour, I'll be out in Oregon, Washington, and Northern California coming up in February and March. New DVDs, got one on the Volt. It should be coming up here. It's done. We just need to get them printed, and they're done. Do on-site training. We have one. If you have any teachers out there, we're going to have one summer intern. So I've got a nice house, spare room. If you've got an intern that's worthy, there's going to be an application process. I probably could even spring for the airfare if they don't have any dough. Get them out here for about 6 weeks and have a lot of fun and get a young man or woman really clued into electric cars. Could be a really good time. So it's time to say goodbye. Everybody's saying goodnight anyway. You're clicking off right, left, and right. So thank you so much for spending how much time you did. Wow, a little over an hour. So thanks. I'm recording this thing, and if you need the recording of it, I'll try to find some way to post it up on some website. Have a great Christmas if you're Christian. Have a great holiday if you're not. And good night, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Let's keep those Volts on the road. Bye-bye.